Hello, дорогие друзья. Hi, everybody. I would like to speak in English. I like the point of Oleg Zhdanov from Ukraine. He's a brilliant military expert, and he said quite recently that the special military operation of the Kremlin is aimed at 2 points in Ukraine. The first is lithium of Donbass as the compensation of the lost 2 wins of the Russian petrocracy, the loss of oil and gas for the whole world. And the second point is to recreate the pressure on Europe, on the whole world, standing very firmly on the Ukraine soil in the Donbas region. So this um, stream will be devoted to the very witty plan by the Kremlin, and this plan is ignored by many opponents of the Putin's regime. Uh, I would like to clear up the situation. In short, the petrocracy, guys who live and get rich on the oil and gas export and operations with it, petrocracy fights against ITcracy, international internet technology industries. They are fighters in Donbass for its lithium. The unexpected Barak Karmal's the second plan, which I described in the previous streams, might end the special military operation in weeks, not in years, as five brilliant military so-called experts uh, promised to the brilliant British magazine or journal, to be more correct, journal, Economist. Uh, I will give you some material in English later on, and this material will be read by my assistant. Well, so if this plan, Karmal II, will be fulfilled, it will be, so to say, the rake of history and painful rake for it of these economist experts. So let's start from the very beginning. Uh, I would like to continue with my assistant. Please listen carefully.
The Economist's fantastic visions of the SMO's end in Ukraine on the eve of New Year. The Economist placed a blinkered vision of the end of the special military operation or the SMO by five experts on Russia. 1. Michael Clark, Deputy Director of the Institute for Strategic Studies, Exeter, UK, sees the end of the SMO in spring. At the same time, on the contrary, he predicted the end of it after a long non-nuclear fight of Russia with the weaponry from friends of Ukraine. The SMO will go on and fighters from the both sides will freeze in the steppes of Ukraine. And even the Siberian recruits accustomed to frost by spring would not know how to hold in their hands non-modern weapons of the Soviet era. But as to the Ukrainians, on the contrary, they are still waiting and waiting for modern weapons from the United States and other NATO countries. They will allegedly help squeeze Shoigu's special forces out of the Donbass later. Michael Clark himself does not believe in the victory of the Ukrainians without the promised weapons from the USA, although he adds that Putin, like Shoigu's boss, also does not believe that Kiev will surrender, and therefore, according to Clark, there are practically no other scenarios except for the continuation of the war, and at the same time, Clark boldly transfers the experience of Napoleon and Hitler to the SMO. They say, in this special operation, It was General Frost who played the decisive role in 1812 and 1942. Consequently, in 2023, the SMO will end with the efforts by General Frost, but not against the armed forces of Ukraine, but against the residents of the cities and villages of Ukraine. By now, they have not had light and heat from the 700 energy and logistics infrastructures of Ukraine disabled by General Shoigu. At the same time, Clark insists that the fighting spirit of the armed forces of Ukraine and the population guarantees Kiev a long but victorious war. 2. Andriy Pionkovsky, a Washington scholar and analyst with his U.S. citizenship since September 2022, has been defending the White House's version under Biden of Ukraine's victory in the long war. That version since the spring of 2022 allowed the US Dems to pump their rights and privileges to get money from the very Ukrainian Lend-Lease program. Dozens of billions from it have already helped the Dems to bribe the mass media and the colored electorate on the internet before and after the elections on November 8th. The long and bloody SMO in Ukraine covers up the bankruptcy of the Dems with their inevitable defeat from the Trump followers. But Pionkovsky connects the longevity of the SMO not with the desire of the Dems in power to grab money from the Ukrainian Lend-Lease program, but with their demagogic desire to save their power before and after 2025, praising the determination and courage of the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian people in general. This word, in general, is important. It seems that Pionkovsky is simply turning a blind eye to 10 million who emigrated for 11 months. And there's his apparent reluctance to see that 15 million Zerobchans who have been working abroad for more than 30 years and are not ready to return home. But Pionkovsky's paramoga or victory over the SMO still depends on the fact that the NATO will soon grow up, as well as 52 Friends of Ukraine, where NATO has been cleverly throwing off old modeled weapons for Ukraine, while for itself the mature alliance of NATO countries plus the rest of the Friends of Ukraine are invited to buy newer weapons from the US Dems at power. Such a growing up NATO plus other Friends of Ukraine technically allows Biden to feed from his hands his own military electorate against the Republicans who are standing around the figure of Donald Trump. Pionkovsky does not write about this side effect, but only simply points to a new package of military assault weapons, tanks, aircraft, long-range missiles, which will change the balance of power on the battlefield. In his forecasts, the very re-equipment of the armed forces of NATO plus other countries, it seems, will definitely drag on not until spring, like Michael Clark, but for a year ahead. And then the armed forces of Ukraine with those long-awaited weapons will return to Kiev, both the south and the Crimea. At the same time, as Pionkovsky fantasizes, the Ukrainian will prepare long battle with the SMO. Together with the United Kingdom and the United States, it is a new architecture of international security. But it seems that the new king of the UK, Charles III, and sleeping Joe Biden are unaware of what Pionkovsky told The Economist. Biden is clearly in no hurry himself to bury the SMO quickly or for a not very long time. After all, such a cooperation with the Britons will quickly empty the Ukrainian Lend-Lease purse for the Dems. And so far, Biden regularly serves as a bottomless barrel of money to expel Trump's followers as white supremacists and anti-vaxxers from the U.S. armed forces. In addition, Biden foresees a threat from Trumpists in the military uniform as defenders of the population and the police from rampant gangs of drug dealers and millions of illegal Chicanos. The Dems led them to enter the United States as potential colored electorate to win the 2024 presidential elections. 3. Barbara Zanchetta, faculty of war studies, King's College London, believes that the Kremlin sees passive acceptance by Ukraine of Shoigu's actions without any meaningful involvement by Ukraine's friendly countries. Her conclusion is brief and cruel. The cost of poor military leadership and the lack of negotiations between the fighting parties will drag out the SMO's end long after 2023. Barbara Zanketti does not have a word about the military training of troops for Kiev, which Boris Johnson planned. And it, by the way, was then handled by instructors who looked like the rugby pitchers of New Zealand, with an emphasis on militant yelling like indigenous Maori people do. Barbara argues in the pages of The Economist that the USSR fought and lost all wars that were ended with shame. Therefore, for 11 months of the SMO, it is obvious to her that the miscalculations of the political military leadership of the Russian Federation, as the heirs of the USSR, lead to the same shame. It seems that Barbara does not see a transit of the Kremlin's national security and defense paradigm from poking with nuclear horns like bulls with NATO, and from negotiations with the United States in the spirit of the nuclear Talmudistics to the quite unusual strategy of pressure on the friends of Ukraine. It means the pressure without the Kremlin's costly and useless reliance on the WMD. The new strategy seems to be executed without large expenditures of the Kremlin alone, but together with newly rich countries of the 21st century. The new alliance of SCO-BRICS member countries plus Iran and Venezuela. The old nuclear Talmudistic strategy seems to become inferior to the non-nuclear Fleabite strategy. In particular, in August 2022, the actions of the SMO were supplemented by Fleabite's rehearsals versus 52 Friends of Ukraine. They were aimed to force Zelensky to start negotiations on the Donbass occupation on the Kremlin's terms. Since November-December 2022, the Kremlin has also been driving the unnecessary population away from Ukraine's lithium belt. A new wave of Schroederization or bribery of EU leaders is also on the rise. In January, there have been several arrests of bribed bureaucrats in the EU structures, those who received bribes from the Kremlin through intermediaries in Qatar, for example. Germany's negotiations on the resumption of gas supplies from Russia are also an obvious sign of a new era of Schroederization. 4. Ben Hodges, a former commander of U.S. armed forces in Europe, is confident that Kiev will overwinter the SMO, thanks to some winter equipment coming from Great Britain, Canada, and Germany. What is the difference of such an equipment, for example, from tropical models? Is it cheap military equipment without air conditioning and used for rank and files with fur socks? Hodges does not see any dangers to the armed forces of Ukraine in quagmire of guerrilla warfare, both in the south and in the Crimea. The armed forces of Ukraine are doomed to be defeated even if they rely on the Tatar guerrillas with their hope for support from President Erdogan. It is abundantly clear that it is more important for him to fight the Kurds in 3 neighboring countries. Moreover, there is the hanging sword of Damocles in way of a military coup. It seems to be quite possible to happen in spring or in summer. Retired General Hodges himself probably forgot about the powerful role of the military electorate in the United States.
Right.
And even more, he seems not to understand potentials of hatred from the ex-military and their families towards him as the usurper. It is unlikely that Hodges also knows anything about the population of the Crimea. He cannot imagine circumstances of the people's guerrilla warfare against the Ukrainians. After all, since the time of Khrushchev, the retired colonists of the Crimea have preserved or acquired personal weapons under Putin. And with no understanding of all these potentials, Hodges plans to return Sevastopol to Ukraine by 2025. The retired general does not see that the Kremlin no longer needs to transport the lithium of Donbass to the world markets through the southern Ukraine. After all, the Azov and Black Seas have been easily blocked by Erdogan, and his successors are unlikely to cede this right to charge lavish taxes or bribes for transportation, whereas it is more profitable for the Kremlin to export lithium, grain, and potassium of Ukraine through Belarus towards Kaliningrad. There is an entry to high seas if it is not
the
covered by
right
any NATO
point
members'
to
submarines.
transport.
Now Russia has her nuclear subs in the Atlantic Ocean for so-called military maneuvers. As to Ukraine's resistance on the ground, there is quite possible to build against it nuclear missile and space forces umbrella from the nearby territory of the newly formed Triple Union. It includes the Donbass region with its president Yanukovych to step into the fake Slavic family of the Union state. It was conceived only with two signatures in 1997 by Yeltsin and Lukashenko. Today, like Yanukovych, they are in a political grave. But the Kremlin will be willing and able to repeat the experience of protecting democratic Afghanistan from US missiles in Turkey. It could happen up to February 24th, 2023, and there will be no more Hodges, long Ukrainian war. 5. David Shendelman, a military expert from Israel, also suggests protracted fighting here and there in Ukraine, forgetting that someone has to sit in a shop. And in that shop, there is a constantly rising price of lithium. Only David, for some reason, talks about the Russian world, which determines the geography of the battles around the Donbass. And the Kremlin, with its increasingly aggressive digital CRACY, wants, but cannot yet replace the oil and gas noose around the neck of Ukraine and the EU with lithium. The evident losses, dead bodies, of the petrocrats of the Russian Federation for 2022 are numbered by dozens of captains of the oil and gas industries and even, possibly, hundreds of their lieutenants who died or were killed by someone, and none of the deep people defended them or spoke out against the government or its guardians. Handelman
The
speaks with knowledge about the
bureaucracy is
mobilization of the
unprotected
population,
in the
as in Israel.
Russia, in the
Yes,
Russian
there are
Federation.
remains of a hostile Arabic and Shiite environment versus Israel in all azimuths. By the way, it was President Trump who easily neutralized Israel's hostile entourage with peace treaties with the Arabs. But Gendelman, on the contrary, sees the completion of the SMO and the armed liberation of Samstatovo. He says that successful actions there will jeopardize the entire northern flank of the Russian front line. So, the northern flank, and the Kremlin intends to be strengthened with Yanukovych and the Union State, according to the Babrak-Karmel II plan. Alas, large-scale or local battles of the armed forces of Ukraine inside the lithium belt of Donbass mean shoot yourself in the foot. In the very shop, where lithium is evaluated up to $11.5 trillion and more. This is a good fortune for those who could smartly, quietly, and peacefully start selling it to both leaders and outsiders of global digitalization. So, these magnificent 5 analysts and pages of The Economist don't see point blank that the lithium of Donbass has become the ultimate goal of the SMO when it is achieved in the shortest possible time, not in a year or 2 or 3. Why? Firstly, this or that lithium, it exists also in Serbia, is necessary for both Elon Musk and the digital CRACY surrounding him for the rapid growth of the IT industry. Secondly, the completion of the SMO unleashes the hands of the digital CRACY of the Russian Federation, which pushes the petrocracy away from the levers of power. Many foreign experts on the Russian Federation have obvious military political myopia. It makes them difficult to see the selfish plans of a vigorous digital CRACY. It is from the Kremlin crash in Ukraine's 700 energy structures created by the previous petrocracy, its present-day rival for political and military power. The petrocracy has repeated its old dirty tricks with millions of refugees from the DRA and Syria to threaten with a barbaric armed coercion and peace neighboring countries in the past and now all NATO countries plus other friends of Ukraine. So the unexpected Babrak-Karmel II plan, which is quite expected from the Kremlin's agonizing petrocrats, should remind the readers of The Economist of the rake of history, which are painful for forehead of rulers. These petrocrats might replace Putin, free and easy. These petrocrats are Sechin, Miller or Sobyanin. All of them have got strong support from their oil and gas regions, which are under the siege of Western sanctions. Their rivals from the digital CRATS camp are the father and the son Kirienko with IT corporations in hands. Potinin with his lithium, as many as 17 projects for 2023, if any. Of course, there could be some other gray IT horse to come to the Kremlin's throne quicker than they or some old young Petrograts. Vladimir.
All right, you have listened to my opinion, and please try to understand. If you don't understand, please write to me and I will send you the written copy, and we will discuss. We'll go on discussing the situation and how to stop this bloody war for lithium. I want lithium to serve peace, progress, and love among people, not for hatred among them. Now I'm over. Please redirect this material to others and get in touch with me to discuss it. Bye bye.